진행되어 왔었던 환경운동, 환경정의운동, 개발정의운동, 젠더정의운동, 사회정의운동의 교훈과 그 다음에 환경위기하고 멸종이 마치 뉴노멀이 돼버린 현대 시대를 살아가면서 진보적인 미래, 지속가능한 미래를 위해서 자신들의 목소리를 크게 내고 있는 우리 젊은 세대 청소년의 목소리를 같은 한 자리에 놓아서 어떻게 우리가 지속가능한 미래를 만들어 나갈 것인가라고 하는 것들을 같이 모색해보는 자리입니다. 그러면 단도직입적인 질문 들어가겠습니다. 녹색 전환과 그 누구도 지배하지 않는다는 측면에서 유럽의 그린 뉴딜과 한국의 그린 뉴딜 등과 관련되어지는 우리가 소위 얘기하는 녹색 회복, 녹색 리커버리라고 얘기하지만 이게 그린이라고 하는 게 자칫 저는 어떻게 들리냐면 그리드로 들려요. 그래서 어떻게 녹색 회복이 탐욕으로 번역되어지는 그리디 회복이 그리디 리커버리가 아닐 수 있게 시민사회가 비판하는 목소리는 무엇인가?
Greetings to all of you. As my background, I am trained in physics. I did a PhD in the foundations of quantum theory on a topic called non-locality and hidden variables in quantum theory. Basically, quantum theory tells you that the world cannot be separated into fragmented parts that are not related to each other. Everything is connected. What you do to one part makes a difference to something else, could be a particle light years away. And that's why deforestation, invasions into the forest, greed economy, driven by finance, and the Monsantos and the Cargills, who are not growing food, they're growing biofuel in the Amazon, GMO soya as animal feed in the Amazon. And this invasion into forests has given us 300 new emergent infectious diseases, of which SARS and Zika, Ebola, all of these are one. And the most recent corona. Everyone's got infected, but the greed was a handful of companies. We can identify the asset management ones, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards. And I have my recent book called Oneness versus 1% that tracks them. You can identify agribusiness, 4 of them. 4 giant chemical corporations, Monsanto, Bayer, China, Syngenta, and DuPont, Dow. And now the digital giants for transport and distribution. This is what has given us the crisis we are living through, both the climate crisis as well as the public health emergency. The multiple crises are interconnected. So when we talk about the green recovery, we are talking about the fact that the green movement has been talking about green forever. But the green movement's green is about a regeneration and recovery of the earth to reclaim her systems. I have worked for the last 36 years on agriculture because I saw that is where the worst harm is being done to our communities, our cultures of farmers, and also an industrial globalized agriculture is responsible for most of the crises we face. 50% of climate change, 75% chronic diseases and hunger, 75% destruction of soil and water, 90% disappearance of species because we have created chemicals whose only job is to push species to extinction. That is why we must extinction. We must extinct the greed that guides the race to extinction. And painting this greed exercise with greenwashing will not solve the problems. What we need is a recovery of the Earth's integrity, her ecological cycles, and my work has shown, I've done a book called Soil or Toil, that if we take care of the earth, we give back organic matter to the soil, we do organic farms all over, in Korea, in India, in Amazon, in North America, everywhere in the world, we can in 10 years reverse climate change. 10 gigatons of carbon is what we can pull out of the atmosphere. and give back to the earth. We need a recovery of the human condition. Look at the inequality between the 1% and the 99%. And the idea of no one being left behind is also to be defined in terms of what are you taking as a measure. I remember I was in a debate in Melbourne at the World Economic Forum more than a decade ago, where I was talking about the water apartheid, where people don't have water, the nutrition apartheid, people don't have food, livelihood apartheid, people are losing their work, the femicide, the terroricide, the ecocide. And Bill Gates was talking about the digital divide because they want everyone sucked into a digital empire. So you can say by locking everyone into a surveillance economy, no one's being left behind, but many are being pushed out, as we witnessed in this period of the COVID lockdown and the measures that did not put the earth at the center and human rights and democracy at the center.
지금 시스템에 관한 얘기가 나왔으니 두 번째 질문으로 넘어갈 수 있을 것 같습니다. 기후위기하고 지속가능 발전을 위해서 실현 가능하고 지속 가능한 솔루션으로서 PPP라고 얘기하는 Private Public Partnership과 관련되어지는 민관 기업 협력 파트너십에 관한 논의들이 진행되고 있습니다. 전 세계적으로 지금 진행되고 있는 이 논의는 특히 2015년 언의 지속가능 발전 채택 이후에 더욱더 강조되고 있는데요. 사실 저희에게 있어서 PPP는 새로운 얘기가 아니에요. 1980년대의 경제 위기를 회복하는 과정에서 PPP가 전 세계적인 화두가 된 적이 있습니다. 그러나 그때의 PPP는 저희에게는 민영화였고 사유화였고 빈익빈 부익부 양극화의 심화로 귀결되어지는 PPT라는 굉장히 부정적인 경험들을 가지고 있습니다. 그러면 지금 SDG 시대에 우리가 얘기하는 PPP와 과거 우리가 경험했었던 PPP 사이에서는 어떤 차이가 있는 것일까요? 우리가 지금 얘기하는 PPP는 어떻게 더 나은 다른 PPP를 실현해야 된다는 얘기인 건지 이 부분에 대해서 반다나 시바 씨께 답을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 의견 부탁드립니다.
Yeah. So if you look back at history, we had a few short 100 years of colonization. And then in the 40s and 50s, after the wars, countries started to become independent and started to create the national economies. And economies were based on national sovereignty, public sector, nationalization of vital resources. The late 90s and early 80s was the time when public sector, the greed economy started to view these amazing assets that had been built as something to be privatized. And I'll give you a very simple example. You had a very big steel company called POSCO. In 97, there was a financial crisis and the dragons, who were the drivers of the global economy, crashed. The public sector was privatized. POSCO was taken over by Wall Street. I know this because the privatized POSCO came and tried to grab land in India for mines, for ports, for an export-oriented plant to mine steel to send to China. They are privatizing the ecological services of nature herself. This is what the billionaires and Wall Street are seeking to do. But they're also redefining human beings as human capital, not as autonomous sovereign beings making decisions shaping democracy. And I'll give you an example that has shaped so much of the discussion. We have environmental laws. We have environmental movements like our young colleague, on the ground, at the local level, at the national level. We have international laws like the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Climate Treaty that were framed at the Earth Summit. We have international laws. These are international partnerships to prevent harm to the. Then have globalization and a deregulation and a new turn of private-public partnership who have redefined even what a human being is. Now, in one reason I got involved in agriculture was because 1980, we had tremendous violence in the state of Punjab, where I had done my MSc honors in particle physics, and a gas leak in the city of Bhopal. Punjab, 30,000 deaths. Bhopal that night, 7,000 deaths. That's what made me sit up and say, why are so many people dying? And then but in my view, all species have equal rights. All human beings have equal rights. That is what the human rights treaty out. And the new public-private partnerships basically saying some humans don't count. A lot of nature that we can't exploit doesn't count. And it is unbounded, limitless greed economy to green economies, green in heart and green in mind.
기후 정의를 위해서 저희가 지금 하고 있는 P4G, 파트너십 for green, 이 트랜스포메이션 언에서의 민관 협력, 정부 기업 파트너십에서 중요하게 강조되고 고려해야 될 점이 무엇인지에 대한 의견을 주시면 좋겠습니다. 부탁드리겠습니다.
So when we talk of climate justice, we have to understand, A, what is the climate disruption? In my studies, climate disruption is the disruption of the Earth's systems which manage her own climate and the violation of the planetary boundaries. What is biggest contribution to this violation? If you look at the planetary boundaries graph, it is species destruction, biodiversity destruction, the extinction crisis on the one hand, and the nitrogen pollution on the other. I don't hear too many people talking about nitrogen, even though it is the single biggest greenhouse gas damage. It causes damage to the climate 300 times more deadly. And we have billionaires like Bill Gates talking about fertilizer, which is the single biggest reason for damaging the waters, the oceans, our health, the soils, and the air. 90% of the nitrogen fertilizer isn't taken up by plants. It goes into the air as nitrous oxide, into the ocean to create dead zones, and into the soil to kill life on Earth. Now, you can have a public-private partnership by the corporation saying, I will be regulated. You know how soil works. You know what is good for the soil, what's good for the farmer, what's good for the eater. Chemically contaminated food that gives us 75% of the chronic diseases, or healthy food with organic food. So a true partnership in climate justice would be, A, the violators accept, become accountable, become responsible for the harm. But there can be another private-public partnership, which is of climate injustice. And this, sadly, is what is being proposed in the new language, in some of the green recovery language. It's called net zero. And it's in this book. It's all in this book by Bill Gates. And he is talking about net zero as not really getting rid of carbon dioxide, not getting rid of greenhouse gas emissions, because he is actually promoting industrial agriculture as the green revolution. That's the studies I did in the 80s in India. That's what he's pushing in Africa under the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, which has increased the poverty, increased the hunger, and just increased the sales of chemical fertilizers and GMO seeds. This is not green in terms of the color of life. We know green and the color of life, climate justice means allow local organic farmers to have their economy. Therefore, change the rules, unjust rules of international trade. Make the polluter pay according to the international agreements of the Earth Summit. The polluter must pay. And third, the precautionary principle, do not experiment with life-destroying technologies like geoengineering, gene drives, gene editing. Precaution must be the rule. Now, for the polluter pays, if a disaster takes place in the Bay of Bengal, as it does every few years, or in my region of the Himalaya where the glaciers are melting, and we had a disaster this February, we had another disaster in 2013 where 20,000 people died. Polluter must pay means we know who is causing the harm. It's very easy to identify. We know the fossil fuel industry. We know the synthetic fertilizer producers. We know exactly who's destabilizing the climate. And I have written in my book, Soil Not Oil, that it is now time to identify the corporate polluters and not diffuse their responsibility. Net zero is one trick of the new non-green, greed-based false solutions. But there is another trick, which is called the zero-cost economy. If you go back, we were colonized by the East India Company, the first corporation created in the world. And it was called limited liability. Limited liability means if the profits come, it's theirs, but if there are costs, the society bears it. Now they're moving to zero-cost economies, where all the costs are borne by society, both in terms of public financing of false solutions, in terms of risk-taking, and in terms of subsidies. So we are talking of really all the wealth of society going to the investment plans based on fake science, fake economics, and a fake democracy of stakeholders. True democracy begins from the grassroots. It is within the countries. It is what you are doing in your People's Summit for P4G. This is real democracy. This is true partnership. And this is what we must deepen.
그런 점에서 저는 이제 마지막 질문 오늘 두 분께 드리고자 합니다. 이 마지막 질문의 내용은 풀뿌리 시민사회가 정치적 시민으로서 경제적 소비자로서 우리가 이런 모든 환경 위기를 극복해 나가야 될 핵심 이해 당사자이자 주체임에도 불구하고 많은 경우 다자간 파트너십에서 청소년, 그다음에 여성 등을 포함한 많은 풀뿌리 시민들이 참여하는 대표성은 취약한 상황입니다. 우리가 개발정의, 발전정의, 환경정의, 사회정의, 젠더정의 이를 포함한 전반적인 지속가능성을 논의할 때 정부, 기업, 그다음에 시민사회와의 파트너십에서의 풀뿌리 시민사회의 역할, 어떤 입장으로 어떤 역할을 하고 어떻게 참여해야 될 것인지.
So when you talk of grassroots, my mind goes to the roots of the grass. It goes to the beautiful photosynthesis that is taking place in the green shoots and the leaves of the grass, but also the amazing root system that is then interacting with the soil. So what is the role of civil society as the grassroots of society? A, the rootedness of the true green, the rootedness of cultures, economies, democracies of life. And in economies of living systems, we take care of the sustenance of biodiversity around us and the sustenance of our communities. Therefore, we have to both protect the economies that give us sustenance, the rights of those who protect our sustenance, the rights of women, the rights of the caregivers, the rights of all those who have been rendered invisible in a growth economy which only calculates that which is taken out of a system as profits, not what circulates in a system as processes of keeping healthy ecosystems and healthy lives. The very important second part of the role of civil society is to be the conscience keepers of societies. We have always been the voice of nature. We have been the voice of the marginalized and the excluded. And every movement, even the Earth Summit in Rio, was created because there was a civil society movement for 2 decades before that to protect the environment. We've never had a grassroots movement to say, make more profits, make bigger corporations, have bigger monopolies. That has always come from the top down. From the grassroots up has come the rights of the earth and the rights of people. So civil society has to stay rooted in its values, in its power, in its organizing capacity. And this means we have to stay rooted as Earth citizens. I have written a book called Earth Democracy, that this economy of greed has brought us to the brink, given us climate change. I wrote it before the pandemic. If I was to write it today, I would talk about the threat to the very survival of human life. My people in India are dying for lack of oxygen. More than 2 million have died for lack of oxygen, because the body's ability to generate its oxygen and hold its oxygen is being destroyed with both the invasion into our bodies as well as the invasion into the forests. So civil society, as the grassroots, has to say, stop the invasions. We have had the power to do this. We have stopped again and again and again the spread of poisons and chemicals that give us cancer, the spread of unjust trade rules that create hunger. Right now, there's been a big victory around the vaccine issue, where the intellectual property rights of the WTO, the governments had to follow the proposal from India and South Africa to have a waiver that the rights of the corporations to make monopoly money is not higher than the rights of people. I have fought Monsanto, which wanted to patent seed. And I said, no, seed belongs to itself. Seed belongs to the farmers. For 34 years, I have saved seeds through the movement Navdanya. And you're welcome to go to the website of Navdanya and see the courses we offer of how to offer real change and be more powerful in making the change. We have to be earth citizens, remembering we are part of the earth, but we have to be public citizens. That's the public-public partnership you are establishing with your government. And then we have to resist being investor citizens. That's how the stakeholder discussion is trying to redefine us, that we are merely the errant girls and errant boys to spread the net of greed, to suck out the last dollar, the last shilling, the last rupee out of from nature and her life and out from society as subsidies, as redirection. You know, we have austerity measures where what should go to society is going as a subsidy to corporations for privatization. What should go back to nature is being siphoned off to keep running the money machine. We are not investor citizens. We are earth citizens. We are public citizens. We will defend the earth. We will defend democracy. We will defend the rights of the last human being and the last species on earth. And it is civil society which will define the future by being the voice of nature and the conscience of society.
반다나 시바 씨는 에코페미니즘의 창시자로 알려져 있어요. 그래서 이 에코페미니즘과 관련해서 지금과 같은 그 P4G 그 녹색, 즉 그린 대전환을 위한 과정에서 우리 풀풀이와 운동과 마찬가지로 여성들이 어떻게 젠더 정의와 환경 정의가 어떻게 만나야 될 것인지 이 P4G의 과정에서 그 부분에 관한 의견이 있으시면 저희에게 좀 말씀해 주시면 고맙겠습니다. 부탁드리겠습니다.
So women are really the ones who hold the economy. They hold society. It's their work and they care that provides the food, healthcare, cohesion and community building, peacemaking in family and society. And yet, in the way growth was measured, you know, growth is a very recent indicator. Economies are as old as life because economy means the art of living, oikos, the management of the household. And women have always managed the household. They were the experts in how to not destroy the earth as our home and not destroy our own homes where we live. The word growth is very recent. It's born of war. How do you take money out of the society and use it to finance wars? Use it to have jets and bombers and navy ships and bigger armies. So it defined production and economic measures in terms of if you produce what you consume, that's the circular economy, then you don't produce. So women's work was reduced to zero. Nature's work was reduced to zero. How can we be part of the true green economy and green transformation rather than the greed economy, which made our work and nature's work invisible? First, by saying we are creators, we are producers, we are maintainers, sustainers of life, we run the real economy. The second is change the measures. Change the measures to be measures that are earth-centered, women-centered. And that's the new book I'm writing right now, Towards Economies of Care. How earth-centered, women-centered economies shift from greed and extraction to regenerating the earth, regenerating society, and making sure that no species is pushed to extinction, no child is pushed to extinction, and no person is pushed to extinction, because the extinction crisis is now including the human species. We have 1 billion people hungry. Every day, millions are dying. They are talking about 230 million additional hungry people. And if you think of the sustainable development goals, if you look at the first three, no poverty, zero hunger, and health. Now, if you address them together, there's only one solution. The solutions that women bring, the solutions that nature brings, the solutions of growing food ecologically, building local food systems, and food systems based on health of the planet and health of people. This is how to address the sustainable development growth through partnership between the goals. The greed of corporations is saying we'll take each goal, turn it into a money-making measure. We'll make money out of poor people by locking them into debt, which is the economy that's growing now. As much money was lost by poor people as was gained by the billionaires, $3.4 or $5 trillion during the lockdown period. Second, that we need real food grown by real people through living soil with all the nourishment and nutrition, because nutritional anti-commodities are the reason for disease. They are planning fake food made in labs. That's going to make people more sick. And then on the health side, we are seeing how the health system, instead of being about the care of health, is being reduced to a money-making machine. And that's where the whole intellectual property and patenting of vaccines and drugs and the big pharma and the super profits comes into being. So women have the other imagination. Women, and ecofeminism is basically a recognition that nature's alive and women are creative and productive. And this myth of capitalist patriarchy, that nature is dead and women are stupid, is a myth. Its time is over. And it should not be given an extended life. It will absolutely destroy the earth.